Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. I'm ready for the event.
Grand Blanc East Middle School, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Angie Bussinger with East Middle School. How do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear, Grand Blanc. How do you hear me?
Wonderful, loud and clear. Thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to these incredible 8th graders. We're here with students, teachers, Congressman Dan Kildee, Councilman Creasy, and local representatives from the Grand Blanc community. The students today have some questions for you about what it was like to bake the first ever chocolate chip cookie in space, what it's like to live in space, and how we can make space exploration more hospitable. So let's have the questions begin.
Hello, I'm Christopher Dan, and the question I will be asking is, how did the astronauts bake the cookies aboard the ISS?
Well, the answer is right above my head here in the U.S. lab on the International Space Station. And this is the zero-G oven. I know you can't really see it because it's in this overhead rack, and really all you see is a flat face with the name of the oven on it. But we actually placed the cookies in there, and I will show you. I have an example right here with me. This is actually the cookie that was baked in this oven. So you can see that it is in this small little plastic envelope with these aluminum sides, and it can be inserted into the oven so that it stays in place and can bake. And that is really all we had to do. It was all set up for us like this. The cookies were sent up basically just in a lump of cookie dough, and all we had to do was insert that into the oven and let it bake.
Hi, my name is Rachel Castle, and my question is, how did the cookie look when it was taken out of the oven?
Well, before we first put it in, and actually I wasn't the one that baked them. Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano had the pleasure of baking the samples. So I didn't actually see them before they went in, but it looked like a little piece of cookie dough, just like a raw piece of cookie dough that you would see. You could buy at a grocery store or make at home. And it was already in this little package. And once he inserted them in, it came out, and the cookies, spread out a little bit more, just like they would on your baking sheet at home when you take them out of the oven. And they turned a little bit darker in color as well, just like you would expect from a baking cookie on the ground.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ariana Shalis, and do you think cookies were a good first item to bake in space, and why?
Absolutely. I mean, who doesn't like freshly baked cookies? And I can tell you the one thing that I do distinctly remember from when these were baking. As I mentioned, the oven is right here above my head, and this is in the lab, which is really one of the central points in the space station. So all of the crew members are passing through here, going to their different work sites and to their sleeping quarters, going to the bathroom, anywhere they need to go on the space station, they often sail right through here. And the lab was full of this wonderful smell of baking cookies, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with that. If you come home and your mom or your dad or your sibling, or maybe you are baking some cookies and you smell that smell, and how good that fills up your nostrils, and how good that smell is, and how you can just imagine really wanting to eat a cookie and maybe have a glass of milk with it too when you have that sensation. And we had that here in the lab. I could smell those cookies baking, and it was a great smell.
My name is Lanice Chilton, and in what ways did baking a fresh cookie make the ISS feel more like home?
Well, I think it felt at home, and just in the way that I described it. When I think about when I'm baking, I actually love to bake on the ground. I bake a lot of cookies and muffins and that kind of thing, and I often bring them to people to share with at work. So it did remind me of that. It reminded me when I bake myself, or when I was a kid at home and my mom was baking. She's a wonderful chef and a wonderful baker too. So that did, smelling that aroma of something fresh that was baking in the oven here on the space station really did make me feel at home.
Hello, my name is Stephen McDonald, and when you're on the ISS, what things from Earth do you miss most?
You know, people ask me a lot about what I miss on the space station, and the answer actually is nothing. I really don't miss anything up here. You know, of course, it would be nice to see my family and friends, and I thought that I was really going to miss the outdoors. I love being outside. I love nature, being hiking in the trees or skiing in the winter. And of course, it would be great to do that. You know, when I look down, especially right now in the winter, and I see all the snow, I think about skiing, and that would be great. But it doesn't really, it's not the same as if I really am missing anything. I think that is because we're up here in this really unique, exceptional, very, very special environment, and it's totally alien. Everything is different than anything you've ever experienced in your life. So you can imagine if you're at home and you're sitting on the couch, and let's say cookies, for example, you were never going to have a cookie again. You probably would miss the cookies. But if you're in a totally different environment that you're not used to having, you know, anything up here because everything is so new and different, I think that's one of the reasons why I don't really miss anything. Everything up here is so exceptional, so unique, so beautiful. The things that we get to experience and see looking down on the Earth, going out for a spacewalk, all the different scientific experiments that we participate in up here. There's so much exciting stuff going in all the time that it's hard to miss anything else.
All right, thank you.
My name is Taylor Fields, and my question is, in what ways do you think hospitable touches like baking can improve space travel?
I think anything that we can do, first of all, for psychological support, just to bring some of those elements from home, like we were talking about, those elements become even more important when we're talking about long duration missions. So I'm up here, for example, for 7 months. My colleague up here, Drew Morgan, he's up here for 9 months. And one of our other colleagues, Christina Cook, you've probably heard about her. She was up here for almost a year. So bringing some of those elements in to remind us of the things from back home really are important for our psychological support. The other really important factor in food sources and the ways that we can grow and prepare food in space are important for long duration missions, for deep space missions, when we go further than the International Space Station, when we go back to the moon and we eventually go to Mars. We're going to have to be more sustainable on those missions. We're not going to be able to bring everything with us because it would just be too much cargo to transport. So some of the things that we're doing up here are looking at some sustainability of future food production systems that we might use for those deep space exploration missions. For example, another thing that we had up here, perhaps a little bit healthier than cookies, we were actually growing Mizuna lettuce, a type of very, very tasty lettuce, kind of has that strong mustardy taste and flavor. And I love eating salad and lettuce on the ground. And so we were actually growing that up here for several of the first months of my mission. We had 2 different harvests, and we were evaluating the growth of those plants under 2 different wavelengths of light, one which was more red, one which was more blue, and also different fertilizers in the root mat. Because, like I just mentioned, it's going to be very important to be able to grow and provide a food source for these deep space missions. And that also had a lot of psychological impact. Just like the smell of freshly baked cookies, it was really satisfying for me to be able to take care of those plants, to see something alive and growing up here. You know, everything else that we have is packaged food. We don't have plants. You know, we don't have nature around us up here. So that was a really critical part of the experiment, was seeing how the interactions of growing and taking care of those plants, watering them every day, having the sensation, the texture of the plants, and then even getting to eat them at the end of the experiment as a salad, that did a lot for our psychological impact as well.
I am Elena, and how did you get up to the ISS, and how long have you been there?
I think you asked how did I get up to the ISS and how long do I spend. And I came up here, just like all the crew members since the space shuttle retired in 2011, we all fly on the Russian Soyuz rocket and Soyuz spacecraft. So that involves a lot of working to train and learn how to operate that spacecraft in Russia in Star City, which is the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center where our Russian counterparts train and work. And that was an amazing experience. I spent a lot of time in Russia living and working with them. and learning how to co-pilot the spacecraft. And we launched up here from Baikonur, Kazakhstan, where their launch site is for the Soyuz. We arrived on the space station about 6 hours after we launched, and I've been up here since September 25th. So I will be up here another few months, and that will be about a 7-month mission for me. It's all going by way too quickly, though, I will tell you. I'm not looking forward to leaving so soon, just because there is so much excitement and adventure up here. I'll be very sad to leave it all behind.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Selene, and how do you talk to your family, kids, or friends from space?
So again, along these lines of psychological support, one of the things that our amazing ground teams do for us is to maintain those contacts with our family. Just like the cookies, just like the lettuce, it's important for us to keep those connections for our mental health and our well-being. And so we actually have weekly family conferences with our loved ones, and we can even rotate through different people if we want. For example, for me, I've had those conferences with many different people, my mom, my siblings, and other friends too. Other people are talking to their spouses, to their children, and it's a two-way video chat, just like Skype or FaceTime would be. And we are allocated one of those per week, and sometimes we get extra ones if it's somebody's birthday or if it's a holiday, and we have time to connect on a personal level with our loved ones. We also make phone calls, and without the video portion, but we can call from a computer program as well. We can call a cell phone, and if we need to talk to anybody on the ground, then we can call them and do that and catch up a bit on the phone. So the nice thing is we can stay in good contact with our family, friends while we're up here.
Hello, my name is Taylor, and how do you decide you want to be an astronaut? Did you know when you were a kid, and if you were an astronaut, what would you be?
I actually did want to be an astronaut my entire life, pretty much. I started saying it when I was 5 years old, and I'm not exactly sure why. I think one of the things was that I was very fascinated with science and with nature around me, and really just this whole scheme and this whole idea of exploration. And to me, I just wanted to find out more about everything around me. And so in addition to wanting to be an astronaut, biology was my favorite subject. I was just really fascinated by the remarkable diversity in the animal kingdom and in the plants and in the animals all around me. And so I actually did have a previous career before becoming an astronaut. Actually, all of us do. We all get selected to be astronauts after we have already had another career. So for me, I was working as a scientist, as a comparative physiologist, meaning I was looking at the physiology of animals, and I was looking specifically at the physiology of animals in extreme environments. So I was really interested in animals that live and perform in these extreme environments, like deep diving animals underwater, seals and emperor penguins in the Antarctic, and also high altitude animals. So animals that live at extremely high altitudes, which are more challenging than those that we experience at sea level. So the thing that both of those environments have in common is low levels of oxygen. So if you're a diving emperor penguin or a diving seal, of course you have to hold your breath just like a human does. But somehow an emperor penguin can dive for 30 minutes, an elephant seal can dive for 2 hours. So I was working as a scientist trying to understand how these animals can exhibit those incredible behaviors, and specifically in how they manage their oxygen stores, just like we do as humans to breathe.
My name is Emily Gage, and when do you think normal people or non-astronauts will be able to visit space?
Well, we do still consider ourselves normal people, even though we are also astronauts. And I think that's one of the interesting things about our job. We all were once children just like you. We all came from very different backgrounds and from different places. And, you know, I think it really is a testament to show that anybody can do it. Anybody can really do what they set their minds out to. And including now, I think in the very near future, space is becoming more and more available to everybody, not just astronauts. There are already several different companies on the ground that are doing sort of commercial flights, whether or not they're suborbital flights or coming all the way up to the space station. And so it already is accessible to some people. Now, of course, in the past, it has involved quite a bit of money to be able to afford those opportunities. But I think as more and more people and more companies get involved in this, just like anything else, the cost will come down and it will start becoming more and more accessible to all of the, as you say, normal people on the ground.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danny Prosh. Does your technology work the same in space as it does down here on Earth, or is it different?
Well, there are examples of both. So there are certain things that operate exactly like they do on the ground because we don't need to implement anything different. So I would say, for example, the equipment that we're using right now, this is a normal video camera, a normal microphone, and a normal receiver and transmitter system. We're using satellites to send these signals down to the ground, and all of that is really the same kind of technology that is used on the ground. But then there are differences as well because there are some factors that are unique up here in microgravity when we don't have the element of gravity that drives everything on the ground. And an example for that is this zero-G oven that we were talking about today. So there are certain types of ovens on the ground called convection ovens that use fans to really maximize convection. I'm sure all of you have learned about what convection is in school, but of course it is just this natural movement of air that we have on Earth because hot air rises, as I'm sure you've heard, and that creates a natural flow of air as the hot air rises, and you have this cycle of moving air. Now, up here with microgravity, there is no convection because hot air does not rise without gravity. So one of the things that the zero-G oven relies on, it's basically using electrical heating elements to generate everything that the oven needs to operate. So those electrical heating elements are providing the heat for this oven, and it's heating up to 350 degrees, which is pretty typical for what you'd use for baking on the ground.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Congressman Dan Kildee. I represent all these people. This might be the coolest thing that I've ever done as a member of Congress, so thank you for this. I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about why you think it's so important for us to continue our commitment to space exploration. And secondly, how has this experience changed the way you view the Earth, and how has it changed you, if it has, as an individual?
Wow, those are some really big questions, but I'm happy to talk about that, and thank you for all your support. Of course, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for everything that you do for us on the ground. I think that space exploration is really, to me, an inherent part of us as a human species. We have this desire to explore, to go further, to look around the corner, and if we didn't have that as humans, we would have never even explored the whole Earth. We would have never ventured out in sailing ships to see what was around the corner, and we never would have even discovered all the continents. So I think it is just a normal, a natural, inherent part of us as humans, and I think it's very important in order for us to progress as a society, as a civilization. I also think the scientific impacts, even ones that we don't foresee, are very, very important. You know, that's one of the most important things that we know as scientists, is that sometimes the unintended results, the unanticipated results, are often the most fruitful ones. Maybe not just looking at the question or the hypothesis that you're asking, you may unfold and uncover a whole different realm of answers to something that you weren't even looking at. And basic science allows those things to happen. The basic science that we accomplish up here on the International Space Station, for example, is really important in that we are looking at things really for the first time in space. We're looking at things without this ever-present variable of gravity that has always been there on the ground, always driving and perhaps masking some of the other processes on the ground. So who knows what we will uncover up here. So I think, to me personally, those are the two main reasons why I think that space exploration is so important. And it does change you as a person coming up here. You know, this was something that I thought about my entire life, and I thought really in two different main realms. I've heard it described to me from previous astronauts that have flown up here, and the impact that it has when you look back on the Earth for the very first time with your own eyes. That was quite a profound result during the Apollo missions when humans first went to the moon and first looked back on our planet from the outside. And that was really pivotal in one way for starting the environmental movement. When humans looked back and saw this very thin band of the atmosphere around the Earth and realized how special and unique our home planet was, and that we do really need to protect it. We need to take care of the atmosphere. We need to take care of the land masses and the water, our oceans, all of it. It's very special and fragile. And I think when you look back on the Earth with your own eyes and you see that, you see this fragile blue ball down there in its entirety with everything you know, every experience you've ever had, every place, every person is down there in its entirety. It really does give you a profoundly different feeling for your place in it. And that's really the second main role to me, other than realizing how precious our planet is. It's realizing really how insignificant we are as humans, and even as an entire planet in the grand scheme of our solar system and in the universe, and understanding how important it is to have that perspective. And I think as humans, it's very easy for us to get caught up in small things, small minutia that really don't matter. It's just a human characteristic to feel that way, but it's important to take that step back and to gain that perspective and to realize really that we are all part of something much bigger and that we are all in this together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the students and Congressman Kildee for your questions today, and let's all thank Astronaut Jessica for her time with a big round of applause.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes our event as we count down to 20 continuous years of humans living and working on the International Space Station. Thank you.
Thank you to all participants from East Middle School. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.